Welcome to Trust the Badge. Today, Officer Wesley Hartkemeyer joins us for this episode. Officer Hartkemeyer is a police officer from Wisconsin and the co-founder of Ireport, a pioneering self-reporting system designed to improve the efficiency and community engagement of modern policing. With a strong commitment to evolving the role of police in the 21st century, Officer Hartkemeyer brings unique insight into how technology can bridge the gap between law enforcement and the community. I truly believe iReport is the new technology that police departments and communities across the country will need in a world of developing technology. If you are interested in what iReport has to offer, please visit ireport.us to find out more. Welcome, Officer Harkemeyer.
Hi, I am Wesley Harkemeyer. I am a police officer in Wisconsin. I'm also the co-founder of Ireport, which is a uh, self-reporting system that I created after looking at some of the needs for policing in the 21st century and how we can use the technology at our disposal to uh, enhance the user experience, create an open line of dialogue with the community itself, and give people the chance to police themselves the way that they want to be treated.
Well, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate your time. To start off, why did you become a police officer?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I often say that might surprise people is I didn't grow up dreaming of being a police officer. It wasn't something that, as a kid, I wanted to be a police officer or anything like that. Um, I really didn't get the pull into the profession until I was almost a sophomore in college. At that time, it was around 2014, which was also the same time that, you know, BLM was starting to grow across the country. At that point, it was Ferguson
Right.
that had gained most of the news. And at that point in college, I was, on the opposite end of the spectrum as I am now. I was pretty much just a regular college student, obviously had more left-leaning, politics. I had hair down to my shoulders, and I just spend my day skateboarding around town. I was very much just a long-haired hippie kid. Um, and the profession wasn't something that, I didn't delve into politics too much at the time. I wasn't too interested in anything like that, but the more that the traction around Ferguson started to happen, the more it became more of a national discussion. I started to notice and kind of spend more time learning myself about, what was happening in this part of the country, what was going on with policing, and kind of what was the news saying based on what was I also seeing on the police side of things. And the more I learned about policy and procedure and the things that officers do and the things that they have to deal with legality wise, the more I started to realize that a lot of what I was hearing in the media was, I won't say it's, downright lies, because I don't think it was. I think it was a misunderstanding of the profession itself and the procedures that police have to follow. And a lot of the community just didn't understand what police do on a day to day basis. And so, um, the more I learned about it, the more I started to realize that I think I could be a good agent of change for the profession. And I started to realize that, I could actually get out there and help a lot of people by doing this. And that's really where my interest grew exponentially.
Okay, so throughout your journey with the police department, you're now at the point where you created iReport. What is iReport?
Yeah. So iReport is a self reporting platform which allows uh, citizen users to fill out and complete their own essentially police reports and send them directly to their local police department. The reason I created it was I noticed during my time as a police officer that a lot of the issues that cops deal with on a daily basis are not calls that, are what you would typically expect a police officer to be dealing with in a day-to-day basis, right? When you think of the show Cops or you think of any other police movie you've seen, it's high intensity, getting bad guys off the street, dealing with guns and drugs and all sorts of chaos throughout your day. But in reality, the majority of the calls that we go on are, low intensity, kind of not related to law enforcement exactly. And that comes from, I think, law enforcement being treated as this umbrella fix all for whatever problems that someone has. So, with the larger number of calls coming in that aren't exactly related to law enforcement and more work being expected of patrol, while also having this large push for fewer resources, defunding the police and reforming the way we do things, patrol officers nowadays are expected to do much more with much less. And I think that's being played out in a way that, our ability to keep officers is becoming more and more difficult. We're having officers with years of experience deciding that they don't find the job worth it anymore. So we're losing experience from these officers who have been around for 20 plus years. And we're also having a very difficult time getting people interested in the profession. So we're not taking in enough officers to replace the ones we're losing. And so uh, combining all of those things with, we're expected to do way more with way less. We have fewer officers to actually do the job, and the public perception of the job is the lowest it's ever been. So these are just factors that compound on themselves and make it much, much harder for just a regular patrol officer to go about their day. And so my idea with iReport was to try to divert as many of the non-emergency calls for service as possible into a self-report model. And so I based iReport off of many of the mobile field report writing systems that I've used in the past. So much of what you're filling out if you are using iReport is basically what a patrol officer is seeing when they're filling out a field report. So once the field report is submitted, it's sent to the officer in what is essentially is a completed police report. Um, that alone is enough to take out all of the front end work that's required for patrol officers in their day to day lives. So, what typically happens is, an officer gets dispatched to a call with whatever minimal information that was told to dispatch. The officer drives to the call, interviews the person, gets all the relevant information, does any follow up that's required, and then ends up writing a report on the situation that occurred, whether or not it's law enforcement related or not. And so with iReport, all of that is negated by basically sending a completed report straight to an officer's inbox where they can decide whether or not follow up needs to be done.
Okay. So iReport is meant to give more efficiency in terms of reporting, right? Is that like mainly what you're trying to get to with iReport?
Yeah. And I'm on the patrol end, yes, it basically what I looked at was the number of non-emergency reports that were coming into my department, and I averaged the time out for each of those reports to be around 45 minutes. Obviously, you have outliers where it's, 1 or 2 minutes, you can clear the call, or you're on it for 3 hours. But I averaged it about 45 minutes per call for service. And with iReport, after cutting out all of the back of the front end work, we averaged the iReport call to about 15 minutes per call. So
Wow. Okay.
just from that, taking the all of the non-emergency reports that could be sent to a self-reporting model and cutting them out by a third, in my department alone over the course of 2 years saved almost $1 million in money that was spent. Obviously, you have to pay the officers regardless, but all of that time could be spent being better served in other ways, such as proactive policing, uh, community policing, just getting out into the neighborhood and doing the things that officers were drawn to the job in the first place for, right? On the other end, it also allows the civilian population to reach out to their police department and have their crimes reported in a way that doesn't require them to have face to face police contact. It doesn't require them to have an officer stop out at their house and all their neighbors see them speaking to a police officer, which obviously we have these communities that have historically had low trust with the police department. But crimes still happen to them and they still have to have a way to report to their police department. Typically, they've just been unable to do so. They don't want to have a police officer come to their house. They don't want to be seen talking to the police in front of their neighbors. In some neighborhoods, after something like a homicide or something like that, or a shooting, people are afraid to speak to the police in fear of retribution. And so giving, these communities the ability to, while they're sitting in their living room on their phone, type up a quick self-report or an anonymous information tip with a photo or a video to upload and sending it that way, they still are able to have this communication with their police department without having to fear being seen talking to the police or being the person that's seen as the snitch in the neighborhood or something like that. These people, typically what I see is everyone just wants to be able to live in a safe place, to raise their family, and to live their lives. And the criminal aspects of many of these neighborhoods, although they have a almost a stranglehold on the neighborhood itself, the majority of the people that live there don't want that aspect to be in their neighborhoods. And so giving these people a voice is going to give us a lot more information as patrol. It's going to give us the ability to see what the people in these neighborhoods truly feel and to be able to address those concerns.
What have you seen with iReport so far? What are the results, and do you think it's working?
So we are just at the end of our development. We've spent over about 3 years now working on creating this and kind of building it up and expanding it further than I ever expected it to be, which is just been a tremendous undertaking and extremely fun. So we are currently rolling out, we're demoing for police departments. If you are listening to this and you think that it'd be a good fit for your police department, whether you're a patrol officer who just thinks that maybe try to get our foot in the door, if it will work for you, if you're a command staff, or if you're just a civilian in a town that thinks that it would be a good fit for your city, then reach out to us at ireport.us. There's a contact us button, and most likely you're going to be reaching out to me. And so anyone who wants to have a demo or to discuss whether or not Ireport would work for you, reach out to us. We're happy to discuss. We're happy to demo, and we think that anyone could benefit from Ireport, no matter how small the department. And so much of what we've seen is people think that this is a great idea, and they think that this is definitely where the future of policing is going. Um, Many of the larger departments that we've spoken to, much of what they're saying is, contact us in a few years, maybe just before we can, be more of an established company. But, um, you know, with us being so new or the first on the market to have something as expansive as this. And so what we want officers and police departments to know is we're willing to show you exactly what our product does and to prove that it is going to be something that is substantial for your police department.
I get it's only demo. It's you guys are brand new. When was iReport founded?
So in 2020 is when the idea came to me. That was during the protesting and the riots that were going on. And obviously I was a police officer at the time. So I was in, I was on the street in hard gear during riots, taking rocks and bottles and things like that. And that went on for obviously months, but at the same time, regular calls for service were still coming in. And we had patrol officers who were taking up the slack for all of the officers who weren't on the street at the time, who were dealing with protests, still having to deal with the regular calls for service every single day, right? And so that's where the idea kind of came to me as there has to be a better way to do this. And I reached out to my co-founder, Nick Youthy, who is a friend I've known for a very long time, and he's very much the entrepreneurial side of this. And so we started working on this in 2020, right after I came up with the idea and spoke to him about it. And we've been building this thing for the last few years now. So 2020 is when we got started.
I know it's very young, it's a young business and it's a young idea, but do you see any room for improvement as of right now? Or do you think you just need a bit more of results from these police departments to really see what can be done?
I think no matter how far we get in this project, there's always going to be room for improvement. Um, a lot of the things that we've added over the last couple of years were things that I never would have expected to be part of the original Ireport program, right? Originally, it started out as just a, fill out your self report and send it to your police department. But with the development that we've done, we've added a news feed to the program. We've added a messaging system. We've added notifications and video uploads, photo uploads. We've created a Dropbox feature that police departments can use on their own page to notify users in a certain area in their city that an incident occurred or something is happening. That if you have photos or videos or information, click this Dropbox button and it'll send it directly into the police department's case number. And so those are just improvements we've made based on, conversations that we've had with police departments and things like that. But the beauty of the system is it's not just a police software that can be improved from this. As we continue to grow, we're obviously going to listen and learn from police departments that have these ideas that want to pass along to us. But we also think that there's other aspects of iReport that can kind of bleed into the civilian side, the civil side, the streets department. So things like, hey, a branch is down at the park in the street or something like that. You can take a photo of it and send it directly to the streets department. Or if there's a pothole in the street, you can send it to, again, the streets department or the forestry department or any other civil department that the city provides that can be a direct line to these places. Whereas now you'd have to do a little bit of research before you actually figure out where you're even supposed to contact.
What's your long-term vision for iReport? For example, 10 years from now, where do you see iReport and what do you think of it?
So, long term vision, we want to be in every department in the country. We think that being the standard for self reporting and these submissions into police departments is our goal. We want to be the name that police departments go to when they have they have an issue that needs fixing. And we also want to grow into a more complete company that kind of covers more aspects of policing itself. Um, I think in the short to long term, I think about 5 years, we want to be at least in 10 departments or 10% of departments in the Midwest, which is where, I'm from here and rolling out towards that aspect. Want to be kind of a local name brand to grow out. And then at 10 years, at least 10% of the nation's departments. Um, and we're hoping to beat that, obviously.
I certainly believe that can happen. And as of right now, where is iReport? As in, how many police departments are currently demoing it?
So we are currently demoing with several police departments. I mean, we've reached out to several of the police departments in my area. Unfortunately, I am still just a patrol cop, so being able to
Right.
get out and drive to police departments across the state is still kind of a difficult task for me to take on. But that's why we're
Sure.
doing this, is to try to get our name out there to pull as many police departments in as possible and show them what we have to offer. So actively demoing for any police department across the country. And hopefully we'll have a full launch of the product by the end of the summer.
That sounds great. And just shifting the topic a little bit, just about technology and law enforcement. How important do you think technology is in modern law enforcement? And what other areas do you see for innovation other than iReport?
Yeah, so obviously tech is incredibly important when it comes to law enforcement. We work on information. Anything that's available to us at any given moment is always going to be important. The more information that we can have, the better we're going to be able to plan and produce an outcome that's desirable for everyone. Much of the issues that we're seeing with policing today is when you go into a call, you're getting very minimal amount of information, and officers are forced to respond to anything that pops in front of them the second they walk in the door, right? And so by being able to try and cut down as much, as many unknowns as possible before we're walking into a situation is going to be the biggest benefit to us beyond anything else. One of the issues that I see with technology when it does come to law enforcement is we do not have the same incentives as a for-profit company when it comes to improving our technology. Um, and so as a city, as a city government, they have to create a budget, they have to allocate a certain number of resources to uh, the police department. And if a police department isn't using those resources effectively, or, they have to kind of do what they can with what they have to pull back on some of the other improvements that could be made because, maybe the city doesn't want to allocate as much money, or if they were one of the departments that had a large push for the defunding the police in the past, things like that. So we're working with a very set number from the start. Whereas if a for-profit company doesn't innovate and improve, they tend to, fall apart and go out of business. A police department is kind of a requirement, and they give a set number of dollars at the beginning of the year, and they're forced to work with kind of that amount. But the incentive to really improve technology and to innovate and do everything is not there because they don't have to. They're still getting the same, they're still getting a check at the beginning of the year to do with as they need. And two, the money really isn't there as cities aren't really pushing for a higher investment in their police departments at this time. So I think that is holding us back when it comes to being able to innovate as police departments.
As you know, the public perception of law enforcement is one of the most important things as of today, especially with, as you mentioned, the defund the police movements not too long ago. Law enforcement all across the nation is trying to recover. How do you think innovations like iReports can help improve the public's perception of law enforcement?
Well, I think the main aspect of it is it's giving people an easy and open line of communication directly to their police department.
Right.
With the public perception and the public trust kind of being lower than it has been in several decades at least. Um, I think giving people kind of this small opening to be able to still send in the information that they believe is necessary to their police department without actually, going through the full process of filing a police report is something that's going to make people much more open to the idea of contacting their police department. On the other end, for police departments themselves, I think being able to reduce the amount of work and to open up a little bit of time for officers on the street to be able to relax and breathe and do things like, meditate, calm down, take a breather, have lunch with your coworkers. Those are things that are going to help mental health. I think being able to also have time to do the proactive policing and the community policing, the things that brought us to the profession in the first place is also going to make work more enjoyable and give us more time to do things such as training or, just being out in the community, making those connections. And so I think bringing policing back to more of its core function of being the members of the community that help keep us safe is going to improve the public perception. It's going to improve officers' mental health. I think ultimately it's going to end up making it so that, it's not this hard, thankless job that it has been over the last couple years. And I think it's going to show people are going to see that police officers are, they're not as disgruntled and upset and, grumpy as they've been portrayed over the last couple years. And they're actually having fun. And I think that's going to bring new people into the profession. And I also think that the perception itself, once you start to move it in one direction, more and more people are going to notice that. And they're also going to change their perceptions as well. So I think it's what we call in the profession, the pendulum swing. Um, from 2020, it was swinging pretty hard one direction where the public was very critical of their police departments. Now,
Right.
after a few years of seeing kind of that, the defund the police movement either didn't do what it was intended to do, or crime has risen in the area and police departments have, or cities have slowly gone back and refunded their police departments. I think people are noticing that when you do all the punitive measures to their police departments, things start to get chaotic and out of control. And I think people are starting to realize that we are necessary and we do keep some semblance of a peaceful city. And so I think the perception is starting to come back, but I think there's more work that needs to be done.
For sure. And for those officers out there who are trying their best to change the perception of law enforcement, and for even those who want to join law enforcement, what message do you have for any current or future law enforcement listening to this interview? And how can they change the perspective of law enforcement in the future?
I would say if you're listening to this, then please reach out to us. I'm still just a patrol cop. It's what I do day to day. So anyone who's a beat cop all the way up to command staff, reach out to me. I'm always open and happy to discuss what Ireport can do and to see if it's a good fit for your police department. One of the main things that I think just any person or officer can do is, continue to be that good officer. They say that there's always a couple bad apples that ruin it for everybody, and luckily, the bad apples are fewer and fewer than I think most of the nation realizes. But for the officers who do want to be that good change, continue doing what you're doing. Continue to be part of the community that people can go to for help. You're doing more than you realize.
Absolutely. And how how can communities trust the badge? For example, yours or those across the nation, how can they work to trust the badge?
I think it would be for communities listening, again, reach out to iReport, obviously. But I would say that
Right.
most people feel that they don't have a voice when it comes to, you know, the safety and security of their communities. And I think that getting involved with your local police department and figuring out how are we able as citizens to keep our neighborhoods safe? What things can we look out for? What steps can we take? And I think that being able to put your voice back in there and give yourself a little bit of ownership in the neighborhood that you live in, it helps to increase kind of the responsibility that citizens feel to keep themselves and their neighbors safe. And I think that having that buy-in is something that has been lost in a lot of our communities. And I think kind of getting a group together and recreating that buy-in in your neighborhood is something that I think is essential when it comes to creating a safe neighborhood.
Okay. And what are your final thoughts? What's the selling point for these police departments or police officers listening to this interview right now?
It's that iReport wants to change the ways that we do things as police departments in a way that will not be punitive. So, being able to reduce the amount of work that's coming in for our patrol officers, being able to give them a break, to be able to relax a little bit and take a breather, being able to do the things that you wanted to do when you started that you haven't been able to do lately because you're overworked. I think that being able to open the job up to something that we all dream, everyone dreams about when they're a police officer playing, cops and robbers when they're a kid is to be able to go out and do the things to help people And to be able to cut off a lot of the busy work that comes in, I think is going to be huge for the mental health and just the workload itself.
How can these police departments and officers, how can they find you? What's the website? What's your contact information?
Yeah, reach out to us, ireport.us. Just submit your contact information and it'll come directly to us. And I'm likely the person that'll be reaching out later to discuss running a demo for you. So hope to hear from you soon. Ireport.us. And that's all I have.
All right. Well, there you go. For everyone listening, just go to ireport.us. There you can find everything you need to find for iReport. iReport looks like a great and upcoming business program that can ultimately lead and save time for many officers across the nation. If you want to reach out, I'll put the link in the description and make sure that you have the website available. Thank you so much again for your time. I really appreciate that you got to speak about your experiences and got to tell us what iReport is, and hopefully you can get some more police departments to try it out.
Yeah. Thank you for your time, man.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Trust the Badge. Please follow at Trust the Badge on Instagram for updates, and follow Trust the Badge on any podcast platform such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.